Good morning, everybody. Thank you all for taking the time to show up for our meeting this morning. I know this is a hectic time with the holidays and there's a lot of germs going around, people sick, but we appreciate y'all taking the time to attend this meeting, and also several of you are Zooming in, and we really appreciate that as well. The purpose of the meeting is to visit with our local legislators, many of them are here. We appreciate that. And all the stakeholders in the city and county about the needs of the city as far as this legislative term is concerned. We hear often from folks that it's important for us to all try to be on the same page when we head to Jackson. We also know that it's not easy to always get on the same page. So one of the things that we thought would be important would be to try to have a gathering where we can have discussions about what the city and the county and others have worked on in the past and what we're hoping to do in the future. Now, we have been talking for quite some time about the 2% restaurant and beverage tax that is scheduled to end on July 1st, 2023. And the city and the county have had several meetings along with the CVB and the Link, who all receive a percentage of the restaurant and beverage tax, to ask our local legislators to help us retain this going forward and to possibly get it on a 10-year passage instead of a 4-year. One of the reasons for that would be it would be helpful for the city and the county to be able to potentially leverage the money. The city gets about $400,000 annually from the tax. We use it and have been focusing it in the city on improvements to the park systems here at Probst Park. The county, I believe, is doing the same thing with theirs. One of the things that we have been in preliminary discussions about with the county, just not officially, but just in talks, is looking at how the city and the county can work together with our park systems to make sure that we have the best park system in the city and the county for all of our residents and citizens. So that's another thing we'll be discussing hopefully in the future. But today we wanted to primarily talk about what's going on with the amphitheater. Another area in Columbus where there has been discussion in Jackson is for the redevelopment authority and what's going on in Burns Bottom. But in talking to some of our legislators individually, we think that it's a good idea to have a discussion with all the players in this to try to find a way for us to get behind the amphitheater, which I've got Kevin up here with me, Kevin Stafford, who is the local expert on the amphitheater. We've been taking folks out there from the private and public sector to look at it, to see where we are today, to see how we can move forward. We've had MDA in town looking at it for potential funding. Everybody's been very impressed with what they've seen so far, but also recognize that we need to try to move as quickly as possible in using the facility. And so that's one of the things that we really want to try to talk about today, but also want to leave this open for a discussion from everybody that's here in the room to ask questions and to give their input. This truly is a day of trying to discuss what our potential support could be from Jackson. Kevin has passed out a booklet that he and his team have put together for us that outlines the remaining cost for the whole area there. We are looking at asking the state, for $4 million to complete the project. We also understand that there's a chance we might not get all of that. And we have also been actively talking to people in the private sector about private funding to complete the project as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kevin and kind of let him give us an overview of the what's going on with the Terry Brown Amphitheater from a historical standpoint, from how the idea originated, who was going to benefit from it, from the Columbus Air Force Base to the citizens. We also think that with the current investments that are happening, that the link has worked on in the county area, that this is a good time for us to try to move forward with completing it for quality of life, but for also being good stewards of the money that we've already received from the state. So Kevin, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. So y'all should have one of these. If you don't have one, I have a few extras up here. Picture's worth 1,000 words. I've always said that nobody wants to sit around and listen to an engineer talk, right? And Representative Kareem's going to know most of this because he was on the council when this came around in 2015. But where this started was to support the Columbus Air Force Base. Really, it was a quality of life issue that between the master plan for the Riverwalk, which has been completed, was completed in 2016 through state funding, but then also the amphitheater came out as a quality of life entertainment venue, which this region doesn't have. And so that was master planned in as part of the overall Riverwalk master plan. So with that, a lot of y'all know that on base, they've closed their golf course since then and used that for on-campus, if you will, recreation. But the amphitheater, the very initial ask was $5 million from the state. And at that time, the very first year was around $2 million funded, second year around $1 million, a couple years with nothing, and then 2019 was about $500,000. Overall, there's been a little over $3.5 million put toward the effort, which included also the Riverwalk Master Plan. So the Riverwalk Master Plan goes from where it currently starts at the Riverwalk Park all the way to the Columbus Air Force Base, and shows a lot of opportunities for taking that elsewhere as well. So that's where this all started. And I've talked recently with the base, and they are willing to give a letter of support to continue that effort toward the amphitheater. They think it's important to see it finished out. Now, along the planning process, I know the CVB was at the table, Red Mountain Entertainment, which runs Brandon's Amphitheater, Tuscaloosa Amphitheater, amphitheaters in Birmingham. They were involved with the planning process from the get-go. And so this entire amphitheater has been designed, as they see it, as a boutique amphitheater. So it's going to host about 3,500 people, which for this region is appropriate. You would have 1,700 in hardback seating, 1,800 in grass seating. So when the project, obviously not fully funded, was initially put out there, Light and Water had in-kind resources in helping getting it watered and sewered. The city had clearing resources. They cleared the site along with the contractor, which helped do some beginning dirt work, if you will. And then after that, we put the project out to bid. And so what I've handed to you, this first page, is literally what was left over that was not afforded at that time because funds weren't there. And so what does that include? It includes the restrooms and concessions. And in talking with Red Mountain, they said, we'd love to come in and help Columbus run this amphitheater, but at the end of the day, we have to have a legitimate facility. It has to be gated, it has to have security fencing, it has to have legitimate restrooms and concessions where we can run the venue safely and obviously efficiently. And so that's what's, at the beginning, at the top of the hill, y'all seen the wall, and there's pictures in here, but I'm sure most of y'all in here have been by there and seen that. That's the opening wall. When you come through, on the left and right sides, you're going to have your restrooms and concessions, and in the center, you walk through 3 turnstiles that bring you into the actual venue. Some of you in here in the pictures, you'll see fencing that runs along the east side. That same fencing would eventually run along the west side for security, but right now that's the construction access to get to the top of the hill to build the restrooms and concessions. So on the maroon area that you see, those are the costs to build the restrooms and concessions out, which currently are plumbed for electrical, water, sewer, all that good stuff. Just obviously the facilities haven't been built. In the green, you see civil site. That's going to be your landscaping. Concrete for some of your seating. Down the lower bowl is going to be your hardback seating. So right now that's all grass. So that was cut from the project. So the hardback seating, handrails, trash receptacles, trench drains, things of that nature from a civil standpoint. You take another step down to the yellow sections, that's the actual hardback seating. So picture any venue you go to in America that has the hardback seating, any venue over, I'll think about MSU, the seat that's sitting in my office right now is actually used at baseball stadium. And so with that said, that would afford those seatings as well. And then the final piece is the orange piece, which is to finish out some of the lighting that wasn't put in initially. And so with that, the budget that was not afforded back in 2016 dollars is $1.7 million. And we estimate that there's been about a 35% increase since then. And we all know what construction prices and inflation have done since then. So if you're looking at the very bottom of the page, kind of in the tan box, that's where your summary of what all is the ask going toward. So you have your 2016 bid amount, you have your 35% contingency increase due to time and costs. And then below that, what's happened since then is in 2016, the city also purchased an additional little over an acre just west of the facility for parking. And so if you'll flip back, about 4 pages back, well, I get ahead of myself. First off, we have the overall master plan, which has not changed from the original amphitheater. That's a rendering showing what it would look like. And then if you wanted to dive into the details, you see everything from the landscaping plan all the way down to the seating that would be afforded in the facility. But then going back to what's happened since then, the 3rd page you'll see there that folds out is going to be the actual parking lot that's currently been planned and bought for in that area, and how it ties to the amphitheater and where it is in relation to that just west of there. There's other opportunities for additional parking. So going back to that first page, trying to summarize the costs. The parking lot completion, that $500,000, is the site that's there now. The city purchased the property. It paid about $99,000 over a 3-year period. Public Works came in and cleared it out. Actually, when the city paved a few years ago, that contractor used that area as a laydown yard. Obviously, it held up to their construction traffic during that time frame. So at this point, it is a gravel yard. So you can park vehicles there now. That $500,000 will actually put in lighting, sidewalks, and pave that parking lot. Obviously, make it for use for a combination of buses that would bring people and/or just regular vehicular traffic, everyday traffic, if you will. Then you see the fees that go along with that below it. That's a percentage that was in place for the prior contract. That's both design fees and construction oversight fees. And then you see a land purchase for additional parking. Like I mentioned, there's another little over 1.5 acres that's undeveloped in that area that's actually even closer, that the city in 2016 had appraised that would still be interested in trying to put additional parking and put almost 3 acres of parking there if we could get that property. With these funds, we could not only possibly get that property, but maybe buy some other potential property adjacent to it that would be a good fit for the amphitheater. So, and then of course, on top of everything there, time is money. We added a 10% contingency to all that just in case. And when that comes out to that round, roughly $4 million. And so as you flip back through, we've done 2 phases so far of the project. The stage is in place. The stage is fully functional with restrooms behind it. It's fully ADA accessible. For instance, if you parked at the Harvey, I call it the Harvey's parking lot, but the Riverwalk trailhead, it's ADA accessible where you could handicap park there, come across the bridge and come all the way into the facility and all the way to the restrooms in the back. Every bit of that is ADA acceptable. I'm not saying you would do that, I'm just saying you can. So, but what you don't have are the restrooms, concessions, hardback seating, and then we've had a lot of private investors approach us about, hey, I want my namesake on the stage. We've had 2 different entities come to us, and again, going back to Red Mountain, we've also had 409 Consulting and Red Mountain come together for a marketing plan. And everywhere in that facility, whether it's your Budweiser's or your McDonald's, there's a place for them to put their advertising dollars in this facility. Again, you have to have a functional facility for them to invest in the facility. Now, the current facility as it sits is in better shape than the facility across the river. It sits about 10 to 18 feet higher depending on where you're sitting. In the facility, the stage of the current amphitheater is the exact same height as the stage that's across the river. And so, as you know, now at that stage, it's the highest point, whereas for us, it's the lowest point. So to address some of the flooding that came through back in 19 and 2000, it did get into some electrical, but that was relocated higher through FEMA funds. And that was a 32-year flood, according to the Corps of Engineers. Obviously, it hasn't flooded there since then, but with that, we think that the flood damage was mitigated by moving up those electricals, and with that, all the bollards except for one in the facility were not impacted by the flood at all. So the facility was designed intentionally for the floods to come in so that you pressure wash when it comes in, it moves on out and you clean it up. And so with that though, the restrooms and concessions would be out of the floodplain. And so they were built up on the hill up top. So that's the way the facility would set up. And again, the rendering in here is pictures worth 1,000 words. So after that, you'll see some pictures of the facility at night. This is a 2016 picture when we were doing light testing. And so with that, you can kind of see the house lights, the accent lighting, and then also the bollard lighting you can see in the foreground here. So it's a combination of different styles that will be controlled. You can also see the stair lighting in these pictures. And then again, a lot of y'all have been by this, so I will not go through each picture to define what you're looking at necessarily. Y'all probably understand the function, but the one thing I did want to point out, it's in the back. This year we had MSU's extension service, the Center for Government and Community Development, look at this. Rachel Carter put this report together to basically tell us how many jobs will this create, what's the overall income that it would create, and then also what's the tax revenue, both to the state and to the local governments, and what will each event produce. And it's a very short, easy to read report, but what I have done is highlighted in orange kind of the areas that I'll key you into. it anticipates that, this venue again can hold 3,500 people, that a full event would generate about $41,000 in state sales tax. And then for the local economy, that would also generate about $11,000, almost $12,000 per event. Talking to Red Mountain, this type facility, being an outdoor facility, you could host about 12 events a year. And so in this report, they extract out, if you had 12 full successful events a year, this is how much tax revenue it would generate. But they also are realistic and said, hey, if you only had about a 65% attendance, as far as capacity goes, this is what it would generate. And so still they're large numbers. And so in here, though, it just tells you overall the community spending impact, the tax implications, and then on the very last page, I highlighted in orange there, it estimates almost $800,000 in wages that would be created with a 36 job number impact. So with that, I know funding is everything, and to complete the facility is what's desired. And the do nothing option at this point, Mayor and I've talked about, you have a better facility right now on the west bank of the river than you have on the east bank. And so it could be put to use as a full grass facility just without full restrooms and concessions.
Give them the Rod Stewart example too. I
Yeah.
think that's a good.
So we were talking with Red Mountain, and Tuscaloosa had, and this has been obviously years ago, they had Rod Stewart booked to come in and could not sell half of the venue out. And the way they do that is if they don't have great sales, they try to sell every other row to make it look full. Well, they couldn't even get there with Rod Stewart, so they canceled the show. And they said that would have been a perfect opportunity where they could have relocated here, had a smaller facility. The ticket price probably would have gone up for that matter, and yet you would have had a full venue and it would have worked out. The other thing we've talked to them about is, I asked them, I said, what kind of shows are we really looking at in Columbus? I said, my mind thinks about the Coast Casino Tours, and they said, that's exactly what you're looking at. And so we went to the websites and looked up all the bands that year that were playing on the Coast Casinos and just started listing them. And then our stakeholder committee kind of circled the ones we thought would be unique and well suited for Columbus, and asked them to come back with some performers on what those would cost. And reality is they said some shows you're going to pay for just to keep the notoriety of the venue up. Some shows are going to make you money. You just have to decide how you want to run the facility, obviously, at those numbers. But they ran the numbers and showed how you can make money with certain groups there. But they said this would be a perfect facility for groups that are going between Memphis and Birmingham and the coast. This is that midweek potential stop where they could stop and have a show here as well. So not to say you couldn't get a weekend act as well, but they would be responsible for doing a third party. And I say they, I shouldn't say Red Mountain, any operator, venue consultant could operate this facility. And I think that was, once the facility's done, would be the next step, is to get that person on board. But nonetheless, those are the type shows, type people you would look at trying to get in here potentially, and yet it's designed to where any band can come in and play there. So.
Yeah, it's also designed where it could be useful for the community too. You could have graduations there. The local high school could have graduations there. We've talked about having the different bands from the schools play there. There's a lot of activities that could go on outside of the big names that we were talking about through Red Mountain. The local arts group has reached out to us. There have been churches who've reached out to us that would like to have events there. We have looked at potentially having an event there without it being complete. There's always been the idea that it's better to wait until it's complete because you don't want to have a bad first impression. But from what Kevin and I have talked about and studied recently, and in talking to the council too, there's probably a good opportunity to have some events that could go well there, where you would bring in porta-johns, food trucks, and the kind of things that are not completed in the area now. Some of the folks that have gone out recently and looked at it were very pleasantly surprised at how good it looks. But it's obvious that we do need to begin doing something soon. I think it's also important to remember that I think once this is complete and there's some activity there, you're looking at other potential growth on the island. Been folks that have own some buildings over there that have talked about restaurants opening up. There's also been the debate of, well, that's industrial, it's not entertainment. Well, there's no reason it can't be a hybrid of that. And since the amphitheater is there now, I think that it's incumbent of us to try to make it a hybrid. A lot of the trucks and things that'll go through there are during the day, not at night when it would be an entertainment district area. So, I think that not only is it important that we move forward and be good stewards of the money that's already invested there, but I think it's also important for us to think of the big picture too, of what this could mean for that area in Columbus and tourism in the area. I know that Nancy and some others are on Zoom that were in the early discussions about the amphitheater. Nancy, do you have anything you'd like to add to what Kevin said?
You're muted.
Is she talking? Nancy, you're muted.
Hi.
There you
Yes. I was trying to unmute, sorry. Yes, I've always been very much in favor of the amphitheater, and I continue to be, and I'm glad that you're having these discussions with Red Mountain. I know that we met so many times, and they always had good advice for us. I felt that they were very honest about the groups that would be successful here, the kinds of music that would draw people from Mississippi State University, from, of course, the W, from Columbus Air Force Base. And I think that's one thing that's very important. We've got to know who our market is and who are we trying to attract. And if you've looked at any of the data from the Brandon Amphitheater, it's highly successful. To me, just what I have followed, they go more the country, Luke Bryan route, but they also come up with some things that are kind of surprising. But I love one of the things that Kevin said, that we could potentially catch those shows that were maybe not a sellout in Tuscaloosa. And I like the fact that they're thinking about things that from Memphis to Birmingham and then down to the coast. I think those are all very important thoughts. I was attending a meeting with Visit Mississippi last week, and we were talking about who our customers really are in this part of the state. And of course, it's what we knew. It's Memphis and it's Birmingham, even in Tuscaloosa, Jackson, Tennessee, Nashville, and other areas. So I think that our market is very broad, and people love a good show. And I think that it's an attraction that we really need to go forward with. And anything that I can do, that the CDB can do, we're all for it.
Thank you, Nancy. Kevin, did you want to add something?
Yeah, so the mayor and Nancy touched on a few things I did want to bring up during the design process, because I've been here since the beginning, and I forget a lot of you have not. And so some of the things that Red Mountain said was imperative is, one, that don't just focus on the 12 shows. They said you have to use this facility throughout the year for community events to keep it viable, to keep the community engaged in the actual facility as well. So while it's great from all the numbers that are in here and all the things that you see and the notoriety that may come from it, the local events, your Market Street festivals, your Sounds of Summers, you fill in the blank. And again, Mayor mentioned churches. The churches were the first people who actually reached out to me wanting to use it while it was under construction in the first phase, before we ever knew that it wouldn't get completely finished. And we've had several reach out even recently and in between. So it's a pretty consistent thing from that community as well that wants to be used. One of the things I didn't mention is of the 1,700 seats down below, it's flex seating. And so 1,100 are set in stone, whereas we kind of have in the front, the younger crowd, I guess we'll call it the mosh pit area, but I call it the flex seating area, where you put out your chairs like we're sitting in here, your fold-up chairs. And so let's just say you have a graduation there, and the graduates sit down there in the folding chairs. There's 800 of them there, so that'll obviously handle the schools we have here. Well, when the graduation's over, you fold the chairs up and the band plays, and you have your graduation party there in place. Or we've done in other facilities, picnic in the park, where we set up tables in that flex seating area. You have a band or some kind of instruction on stage, and people teach you how to make whatever, and you're right there. So it sets up as a different flex venue to have something more than just music in the facility. So it's designed to have that flex seating in the front, the hard seating in the middle, and then the grass seating up top. And so you have multiple ways that you can, entertain people. And of course, that also lends for different ticket prices, for price points for folks. And I joke with the mayor, and I know Nancy, you may want to speak to this as well. One of the phenomenons of amphitheaters is tailgating. Most people come out hours on end beforehand to tailgate. Well, we have a bridge that sits there, and you know, the comments made to us is like, you won't find another amphitheater with a better ambiance of a river and a bridge that overlook this facility. And what we had talked about were setting up these tailgate spots on the bridge. And somebody, you know, like myself that may not want to pay a ticket for my kids to run in there, we may sit up there and tailgate on the bridge and hang out there where I feel like it's a little safer, and you know, I don't have to chase them throughout a facility, for instance. So you have even alternate venues outside of the facility that may, you know, morph once this gets put into place. And obviously the parking lots is where it's naturally done. But with the people we've been with, they've been pleasantly surprised at how close the parking facility is. You know, you've heard a lot of bad comments about there's no parking, and I'm hoping that this will get the message out that there is parking at this facility. And then finally, the mayor had mentioned the restaurant, and they said, look, just like the bridge, there's people who don't want to come into the facility. We want to put a patio on the back and take advantage where you can hear the music, but you can buy from this facility and use our restrooms, and ends up becoming a lot more economical and relaxing for them. So again, I think other things like the mayor said will come out of that, and all that's been planned from the get-go and discussed of how it'll morph beyond just 12 shows a year. So I just want to touch on that.
I got some.
Yes, sir.
I think the amphitheater is a great idea, not up to the completion of it. Matter of fact, as you was talking, I said, well, I was there with a shovel, and I might have had on this suit there. But with that being said, there's a few observations that I'd like to make. One is traffic. You're talking about 3,500 people. Has there been any conversation about the ins and outs of that many people trafficking across the bridge? Because it's one way in, one way out. And is that addressed in your plan and completion of the amphitheater?
Yeah, so the parking lot that's there now by no means will stress any of the island traffic in and out. So luckily, you know, you're not going to conflict coming in and out, because I'm not going to say there's nothing beyond there, but at the hours we will probably have an event there, that amount of traffic will not impact that roadway. The other thing is, obviously you'll have people coming from the other side of the river. That'll be, some will be by foot, but we also talked about having shuttles that will come from the soccer complex where people would park at the farmer's market and in that facility, and some will walk. Most will probably, if we provide a shuttle, would prefer to be shuttled over, and so that will help control some of that crowd control, if you will. I'll tell you, Brandon Amphitheater experienced some major traffic issues when they opened up their facility. We actually helped them put drones in the sky, and where they communicate when the venues or when the event's over with, communicate when to let traffic go and help coordinate that. It's one of those mass chaos. You can ask MSU, we design for them all the time. You don't design your roadway facilities for a one-time event, right? You design it for daily use. So when you have that big event 12 times a year, patience will be requested from people. So, you know, you don't put a permanent fix to a temporary issue, if you will. But yes, it won't be an issue based on what we have right now.
So you're saying the traffic issue, it won't be an issue?
Correct.
Okay. Now, the other thing that I always hear about the amphitheater in Brandon Amphitheater had skin in the game, but I don't know how much state money was put in. Do you all know how much state money was put into the Brandon Amphitheater?
I don't, but that should be easy information to get. I'm sure, to your point, I'm betting there was a lot of different skins in the game for that one. So.
I just know when we start talking about the amphitheater down at the Capitol, the Brandon Amphitheater is always brought up because they have a lot of their own money put in it. And I just think that we move forward, we need to look at what's already been invested in it and how much money
Can we?
Yes,
Excuse
ma'am.
me.
Yes,
We
Nancy.
could not, I could not hear anything that Representative Kareem said. Can you repeat
Yes,
that?
Would you-
Or come up to the front.
Would you mind coming up to
They
this?
just can't hear you on there, sir, I'm sorry.
Where's the money?
Right up here on this table.
On the table, okay.
Yeah, what he was mentioning, and he's coming up so you can hear, but can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, he was asking questions about the traffic flow, getting in and out of the area, and Kevin was addressing that. And he also mentioned skin in the game from, you know, local, from the city, and from, and what I mentioned earlier from, you know, individuals and corporations and foundations who have expressed interest in supporting the facility. he was asking us if we knew how much local money went into the Brandon facility, but we do not, but we're going to look into that, Nancy. But
That's it in a nutshell. Do you know, Nancy, how much money Brandon put in their amphitheater?
Yes, when we met, we met for years. I'm not exaggerating, and Kevin and I probably have that information somewhere, like with the naming rights, Kevin. I think that you're right, Representative. We did find out how much, for instance, visit Brandon or visit Mississippi. I mean, you need to reach out, of course, and Mississippi State. I mean, all of these folks that will gain and from this being here should be supporters and major players in this.
And the reason I'm asking these questions is because as we go back to Jackson, the state has already put $3.5 million from your estimations in this project.
Right.
And that's always been the topic of discussion as far as the state's investment. And at the time that we had that money coming into the state, we also had the chairman of Ways and Means from this area. So that made a big difference.
Sure.
And now the different entities are asking us to go back to Jackson and get the 2% sales tax for 10 years, which is not unprecedented, but that's not an ask that is a commonly asked of municipalities for 10 years. And I'm just asking these questions because these questions are going to be asked of us. And I'm going to further say that I'm going to shut up. If we do get the 10%, the 2% for 10 years, that means that the city of Columbus is going to have access to extra money. And if that 2% passes, I really think that the city should consider repurposing that money to complete this long-awaited project. You talking about 7 years that this project has been trying to be completed. So instead of asking the state for new money, if they are amenable to the delegation to do the 2% for 10 years, I think that's something that the city needs to consider repurposing their portion of that 2%. Now I'll be quiet and let everybody else talk.
Well, no, we appreciate those comments, and those are things we have discussed. That is why we're trying to do this today, to make sure that as we move forward going to Jackson, we're as prepared as we can be to be as successful as we can be. Now, one other thing I will mention about the 2% is that we're also in the process of working on a long-term plan for Probst Park, which is a lot of that money has been focused on in that area. What I'm hoping to do is try to find maybe a little pocket of money somewhere to help us finish the amphitheater, plus have some information to y'all by the time you're in the throes of the legislative session to give you an idea of what kind of local support we have, some possible naming opportunities. You know, those figures always go up and would probably be much higher than the discussions that Nancy and Kevin had and some of the others early on. I will tell you that there are some individuals who have reached out to me that are interested in being supportive of the amphitheater in hopes that Jackson will help us get it complete. I don't know, I can't give you exact numbers at this point, but we will be working hard to have some of that information in place before the session starts, or at least while y'all are in the session. One meeting I was supposed to have with an individual last week, I had to cancel because of being sick, but hope to have that one later this week potentially. So there is a lot of interest in the facility. You know, we've been trying to lay the groundwork with MDA and some others to find those little pockets of money. We know that there is extra money in Jackson right now. We know that there are going to be a lot of people vying for it. You know, some people say that, you know, it's going to be harder for us to get something in this area because of the investment that's gone on in the county recently with the plant expansion. But we've also heard from others that say, no, this may be a good opportunity for Columbus to be able to capitalize on some of that, preparing for, you know, the individuals that'll be moving to the city and that type of thing. So I hear and understand everything you're saying, and it's all good points. I think that for me, and Kevin, you can speak to this a little bit, in all honesty, I don't know how far we can stretch the $400,000 annually that we're getting between Probst Park and the amphitheater.
Right, so the council has pretty clearly spoken. They want to do something in Probst Park, the first phase, which is currently going to go out for rebid this early next year. And this money, 2%, is slated for that. They have the last 4 years set aside, and it's just barely enough to do the bare minimum in this first phase. There's about 20 different options they can do. And to your point about the amphitheater, at $4 million, $400,000 a year over 10 years, with no interest at all, you know, that's all spent right there on the amphitheater. I do think a portion of that could go here, no doubt, but all of it, it wouldn't fit, or you'd have to abandon the Probst Park. And the council has spoken and said that they want to do something in Probst emphatically. And so not necessarily just the first phase. They want to put in pickleball and improve some of the other facilities that are there. And so that discussion and that money, I think, will be used for that. But who's to say why you can't take $400,000, split it in half, go both ways? That's just for instance, that's for a future discussion, right? I think the discussion for today is, you know, this is where they would like to try to ask for the state's help to get as far as they can. And then between private entities, the 2% tax to try to finish this out. And then of course, they being the city, look at the master plan side. But I think from the state's perspective, what's important to know, and I'm going back to the 10-year thing, because I think that's imperative for the city. The city has two different plans, both on a shelf, because they don't have the guaranteed funding. And so I'll give you, for instance, the lighting in Probst Park is an $800,000 ticket item. Well, it is not unusual for a park and rec to pull those lights out and finance them over 10 years to make it easier to swallow, right? Otherwise, that's 2 years of funding right there just for the lighting system, which is a big ticket item. And so we're going to propose to the city through this next bidding process that they do that. But that'll help stretch that money. But no bank is going to sign off on a loan on $800,000 worth of lights when you only have 4 years worth of money coming in. So I think the narrative is we have a plan. We need the state support for a 10-year 2% tax so that we can guarantee that we're going to have funding to pay for that going forward. And then the same thing here. If the city decided they wanted to do a bond for the amphitheater for the same differences, they need some funding reassurances that they can move forward.
Well, everything I regurgitated to you all today are questions that I get from asking. I can't speak on the Senate side. I'm talking about on the House side. These are just questions that we get, which I don't know. Mr. Turner, you've already sent the legislation down for the 2%.
Yes, it's been sent down. I think the link actually sent it, but it's been finalized. I finalized it and sent it to the link, and I believe
Right.
Hey, Jeff, they can't hear you. Can you come up to the phone? I'm sorry. They can't hear you on Zoom.
Jeff, can you just repeat what I said?
Yeah, Representative Kareem asked Jeff if the legislation had been sent to Jackson for the 2%, and his answer was yes. We believe it went to Jackson through the link. And let me say this too, on the Probst Park and the amphitheater, I don't want people to leave and think that we're just asking for state support, because we're not. We're being very aggressive with the Probst Park plan too, trying to find grant dollars and as much funding as we can, because, you know, I agree with the council wholeheartedly that Probst Park needs to be a priority for the city. There's been debate on, and there will be continued debate on, you know, what areas of the park do we need to focus on? Is, you know, baseball going away? Is pickleball the new thing? Is, you know, having you know, set up where people can float on the Lux there and do all kinds of things. I think that there's room for all that in Probst Park. And I also think that the revitalization of Probst Park is a big win for the city in that area too. I think it can revitalize the area around Probst Park. There've been all kind of creative ideas of even in the backside of Probst Park, is there room for, to improve housing and stuff in the area? So I think all those things need to be on the table for discussion and open minds to put these ideas out there to see what is the best interest of our citizens. At the end of the day, that's what the council and I are trying to figure out through all these projects, is how is it going to have the best impact on the citizens in our community. I am a strong believer and have said openly, and I will continue to, that the city and the county needs to come back together in Parks and Rec. I think that it will strengthen the city and the county if we do that. That will not be an easy task to necessarily make happen. The county is investing in a lot of money in Parks and Rec just outside the city limits. When those decisions are made, I don't think we can pack up our bags and go in different directions. I think we need to, even if we don't agree with all of them, we need to try to find compromise and how we can make the best situation in what we have. There are a lot of people who will tell you that they don't like where the amphitheater is located, but that's still not a reason not to invest in it. It's there now. How can we best move forward, as I always say, for the citizens of Columbus? So any other comments? We've got some other legislators here that are hearing it, and I really appreciate Representative Kareem's comments. He is always a straight shooter with us and is always very supportive of trying to move the city forward as best he can in a positive way, from his time on the council to his time in Jackson now. And those are the kind of questions that we need to be prepared for. And that's why we need to have these kind of discussions. What I can tell you from speaking for myself and the council is that we are very committed to both projects, because we think it will be, a much improvement for our citizens. And we're just trying to find the best ways to get them completed as soon as possible. Dr. Vidal, you're on there too. Did you have any comments from the light and water area? Kevin had mentioned earlier that the part that Light and Water has played over the years in helping us with the amphitheater, and then also with Probst Park. We appreciate you listening in today, and she is always a wise counsel to me on topics that the city's working on, and reminding us that it's important that we partner well with Columbus Light and Water too, because it has an impact. Do you have any comments for us, ma'am?
No real comments. I just appreciate you having this meeting. And it's good to know that this project is still at the forefront of the city's plans for developing. I always talk about us needing more ratepayers in the city, and I think this is probably one good step to help us to draw more people back into the city. So we'll be as supportive as we can. And like I tell you all the time, Mayor, we are advocates for the city of Columbus, both in Columbus and abroad. So if there's anything that we can do to help leverage funding, maybe through TVA and some other affiliated organizations, we'll be happy to write a letter of support to do that.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it very much.
If I may add,
Yes, come on up,
Come on up.
so I don't have to repeat it.
it's always a pleasure to have these discussions, and I do appreciate you for taking out the time to, put this together. But we have an amphitheater named after Senator Terry Brown that's incomplete. We went to DC and we got a little over $3 million coming down from there. So there's always different avenues of how we can obtain this money, if it's bonds, if it's loan, whatever we can do to get it. But we got an amphitheater, and he's brought up Probst Park. We got the resources here that can come in that we can put to these projects. But what better way than to have our local legislators that's on the state level that can come in and they can give us anything, really. $1 million, $2 million. We still got ARPA money that can be, leveraged for tourism. All of these projects can go in. We've utilized all the hours, but we know that you guys still have
millions of dollars that you guys can allocate for these things. So we're here, and I don't want to use the word begging, but we're practically like begging. You know, it's Christmas, about to be New Year's. Y'all about to get ready to go back down there and bang it out. So let's anything that can trickle down to you guys. We can even put plaques and, name plates of you guys. You see what I'm saying? I mean, you got to butter you up, give you something, just to let you guys know that, these are projects that we really need. My motto for Columbus for this rest of my life is be a progressive town. It's time to move Columbus forward. We have so many different opportunities here in Columbus where, this is a huge melting pot of different ethnicities, you know the word I'm saying, speech. But this Columbus can be the beacon of the entire GTA like it used to be. You know what I'm saying? Like, all of you guys are from different places, but we have what we have right here in Columbus, and we can be this star with this amphitheater, with this park. The county wants to do their own thing, but I'm also hearing that the county wants to come back to the table with Columbus for this post park thing. So, everybody knows that Columbus is trying to, in my word, move forward, trying to progress, we got sales tax revenue is increasing tremendously. We got new businesses coming into Columbus. So why not complete this project? And I want to say, you're doing an awesome job of speaking up here, man. You turning me up back there. But yeah, when you selling this, we need it. If we don't get the entire $4 million, anything will help us complete this project. It's gonna bring in money. It's definitely gonna bring in money. And Miss Nancy with CVB was stating about all the different, events that can happen for Mississippi State, MUW, different things like that. But then we also have already an entertainment circle here in Columbus that we can. It's gonna bring money. It's gonna bring revenue into the city, and like I said, all this stuff is pretty much self-explanatory. But we have an amphitheater named after Senator Terry Brown that's not complete, and I would love to have it completed. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Councilman. Any other comments?
I'd just like to say, points well taken. Can you all hear me on the Zoom? Do I need to move closer to the podium?
They can, if you go to the podium, ma'am, please.
I'm so sorry.
One of the woes of technology.
I know it.
But to the mayor, engineer, other members of the community, fellow colleagues who are here, I appreciate the opportunity of the receiving the benefit of the report that's been presented. And I served briefly with Senator Brown, who was actually Senate Pro Tem for I think maybe a year or two while I was in the legislature. So certainly to further this project that has been named in his sake and for his benefit, I think would behoove the area. The main point that I'd like to point out is with the 2% tax, as long as there is local agreement with the city and the county, I don't foresee any major issues. In previous years, there was a chairman who preferred that these taxes be limited to 4 years, I think it was. But we've seen some change in that. The main issue is getting those resolutions from the city, the county, or other involved entities to the legislative staff to get the bills drafted. That's what's critical. And as it relates specifically to the amphitheater, I appreciate understanding that this is a priority. I think I also appreciate that you all have are addressing the Probst Park issue. It shows that you all are considering the various diverse aspects of the community. And as long as we are armed with your plan, you give us the ammunition that we need to go and fight. So thank you. We know that we're going back into Jackson. We don't really know what all of the priorities are, but it helps us to know what the local community wants, and I consider myself to be one of your voices. Thank you.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Since you have this, does it help y'all from a legislative standpoint to have something from Probst Park as well to get the 10-year? I know it doesn't help to ask for the amphitheater, but to get the 10-year because it's a long-term plan and going back to that financial planning for Park and Rec, it does help.
As long as there is consensus with the city and the county, I feel that's all that I need. I can't speak for any other legislators here in the room, but just knowing that you all have a strategic plan, I don't mind going to bat.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Turner Ford. And we do have the master plan that the city's been working on for quite some time that we will be happy to share with anybody. And know that we are available at any time to follow up and to speak to individuals. I think one of the things that is a plus, as Councilman Beard was alluding to, is that we are a very eclectic and diverse community. There is a lot of talent in this area. There are a lot of people who are interested in seeing Columbus move forward. I believe we will be able to demonstrate to those in Jackson that we will have some local support to help us have skin in the game on this, and I know that's important for all communities, all municipalities, and all counties. And I am a true believer that we are better when we're working together on these projects. It's what makes a better community for our citizens. So I promise you we'll continue to do our part on that. Is there anybody else that has any thoughts or anything they've heard today that they would like to hear us elaborate on or go back and do research on? We're more than happy to do whatever we can to make this a positive session for y'all. And let me say this to each and one of you that are here and on Zoom, and most of the ones that could not attend today did reach out to us. There were some conflicts, as I mentioned earlier. I know what you do in Jackson is not easy. I know that it's a frustrating and also a very job that y'all are passionate about, and you all have different perspectives on what can make our communities better and grow. And so we're not afraid of the hard questions. We expect them from you. We want to do whatever we can to help the city be successful. But I really do thank you all for your willingness to serve, to be away from your families, and to go in and do what is not easy work. And a lot of people aren't willing to try to do. There are a lot of people who are willing to sit back and complain or point a finger or, say it should have been, could have been, this kind of thing. But y'all are the ones that are really willing to get in the trenches and try to help the citizens move these things forward. So from the city, from the mayor's office and from the city council, we are most appreciative of all that y'all do and the hard work that you're putting in on behalf of the citizens. Can anybody think of anything else?
Mayor?
Yes.
I would just like to mention to y'all that in recent reports, Columbus is the 10th most visited city in the state consistently. We're number 10, which is good.
That is good.
It's Oxford, Starkville, Columbus, and we had a report last month. They looked over a period of second week in August. It was not a football game, and out of the Gulf Coast, Hattiesburg, Jackson, and DeSoto County, people spent more time in Columbus, Mississippi than any other city in the state. These are significant numbers, and I will get that information to y'all. I think it would be great for y'all, Kevin, for you to have it, and certainly for our delegation going back to Jackson. I think that would be significant, so I'll get it to you.
Thank you, Nancy. We appreciate that. Any other comments?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, ma'am.
Is it possible to receive both of those proposals electronically? And if you send them to me, is it okay to share those with some of the organizations that I come in contact with?
Yes, ma'am. In fact, the proposal that we recently finished on the master plan for Probst Park. I'm very proud to say that, we had several town hall meetings where we received as much input as possible from the citizens. We also had electronic questionnaires that we sent out. So yes, please share them widely and as often as you can. And Kevin can send those to you electronically. We'll get that to you. Thank you.
Has it been determined that Probst Park is going to change its look and its identity? I mean, out of baseball, is there other things, or is it?
Well, we're not going out of baseball. In fact, those are, do you want to?
Yeah, so Probst,
I'm just asking.
right,
Yeah.
so but to be honest with you, the community came back and said baseball and softball is actually their priority. And Greg, I saw Greg, yeah, he snuck in a minute ago. He's right now having to schedule practices, you know, amongst multiple teams on too few fields. And so he needs more fields in the baseball side from a capacity standpoint. So if you'll picture what I call the lower end of Probst, the front side at 182, that area is going to get redone where the Field of Dreams is to add an additional field, but also bring it up to today's standards. So that's what the council has already voted on. We took bids on them as a whole package, and what we've done now is we're going to reshape it into pieces to where we can be a little more flexible if the funding is not there to afford the whole package, but that's the first step. Now, there are some upgrades, such as there's two sets of tennis courts there, where we're gonna refurbish one as tennis courts, the other is gonna become pickleball, which is a facility the city doesn't currently have, so that's something new that's being introduced. There's a lack of playgrounds in that facility that we want to add. There's a lack of walking trails that there's grants for. We've already applied for a wildlife fishery and park grant this last year. Didn't get it, but they said stay in line. And I'll tell you, the one that was just built at the soccer complex was applied for 3, if not 4 times before it finally got funded. So I know Ms. Garrett just submitted a Major League Baseball grant that'll help upgrade any youth softball or baseball facility. So we're trying, and that doesn't have a limit as far as how much you ask for there. And so we're providing all our programming information for it. And so, and of course, it supports, you know, minority youth sports. And Columbus qualifies and checks a lot of the boxes that are in underprivileged neighborhoods that we feel like will be really successful for. So yes, baseball and softball is a good priority there. But the other thing we provide for, better parking, safer parking, safety in that facility. One of the top priorities are putting cameras. I know we've talked with Joe about trying to systematically put that in throughout the facility in different areas. Road with Light and Water, and I'm glad Ms. Riddell's on here. Road with Light and Water, we had a good meeting probably over 2 months ago now. But they've already given a proposal to increase the lighting on the upper side right now, and then as soon as that's implemented, they'll go down and do an assessment of the lower side, because as Greg said, you can hear the groans when you're playing baseball in that facility, and the field lights get cut off, and everybody, they're not to their cars yet, and they go, oh, because they can't see anymore. And so that has to be fixed. So there's little things that don't cost a lot of money in Probst that'll bring it up to speed. But then you have a skate park that can be expanded that's not really up to today's standards. You have a splash park that's literally PVC pipe, and it doesn't bring a whole lot of creativity and imagination to a kid that's out there in it, if you will, as goes with the playground. I hadn't even mentioned the train and the opportunities it presents. And then during our process, you know, Rufus Ward and all his infinite wisdom, there's actually fossils along the Lux, and they're well documented. And in that area on the west bank, kind of close to the 182 bridge, is an area where you could do a fossil dig in that area, and there's grants out there to help do that. We've had some third-party interest, and Jeffrey Rupp's group, the E Center at Mississippi State, is going to do a business plan looking at a canoeing, floating type service that would start as a trailhead at the park and float down to the Lux Park, and then they would cycle them back up. And that could be a revenue source for a third party potentially.
Yes, for somebody else to put in,
somebody
not
else.
for the city to do, but it's like a business plan that somebody could come in and do that, yeah.
In presenting to the council, you know, we went to Vicksburg and looked at their facility as when we helped design zip lines. You know, that facility with its topography sets up well for a zip line. Again, probably operated by a third party, but it would bring another level of excitement, something new to do in the park.
And the disc golf that we have there is already a big deal.
Disc
correct?
golf is there, could use some improvements, and so we actually have a combination of a bridge to help connectivity on the east side right now, but then also that would help relocate, and there's some additional properties for additional disc golf holes that right now go across roadways and around fields. That would kind of be their own thing as well. So there's a lot of things that would bring alternate sports into the city, into Probst Park. That's more than just baseball and softball, but we don't want to abandon that as well. There's some maintenance things that we're addressing, such as the softball fields up top that are all dirt infields. We want to transform those into turf fields, which again, that Major League Baseball grant can help pay for. One of the things we want to do, if y'all remember where the old Sanderson Pool is, it is out of the floodplain, one of the few high areas that is undeveloped in the park at this point. Could become a multi-use field. So picture a softball, baseball, but also full football, soccer field, all wrapped into one year-round turf field that can be used. And so that's what we've done over in Vicksburg. It's highly successful, and for Greg's purposes, it gives him another venue in a hard rain that he can still play ball on if necessary. And so, so again, those are some of the things that are in the plan. You know, it's over $20 million worth of improvements, but you know, how do you eat the elephant one bite at a time? Having that 10-year guarantee of some funding source to come in helps start the city to give confidence to move forward with that. So,
And as we mentioned earlier, the grants could potentially pay for the fields. Now, you know, it was debated in the newspapers, it was debated amongst the citizens about the ball fields that the county are building and how that will affect the baseball fields that we are going to also do in the city. Again, I think, you know, we have to move forward with the hand we've been dealt. I had Kevin take me through the facility that's coming in Starkville that everybody's been talking about, you know, is going to pull in so many types of outside groups coming in to play ball there. I was not that impressed. Sorry, Starkville. I mean, it was okay, but I think we have the potential to partner with the city, what we have in Probst Park and what they're building out there, to bring teams in for competitive play here. There's some individuals in the city. There's a lot of softball leagues out there that a lot of towns are, you know, capitalizing on, where softball tournaments are being played. You know, we're building these with the idea of supporting our local citizens, but the potential income that can be brought in by these tournament plays that are still out there, we're going to try to be very aggressive in, you know, making sure that we're partnering with the county to bring in, you know, as much of those types of activities as we can.
so just to jog my memory, because this was submitted in April of this year, but we have a summary page. It's over $27 million worth of improvements that we've looked at. And it's put in priority of what we heard from the community. And so to kind of give you a top 10, the ball field renovations at the front entrance, which the council's tackling right now, was a top priority. And then security cameras, interior road and signage and safety, emergency response stations, bollards for secondary entrances, in other words, to close off so people don't joyride through the park. New T-ball field, and also building renovations, putting a wrap around the train. Right now it looks like security fence around it as opposed to something more welcoming and inviting, right? Picnic areas, playground, connector trails, fitness equipment, and pickleball. So again, that's just some of the top 10 right there out of all the recommendations, few of which are baseball and softball centric. So, but again, it goes on and includes a lot of other things, and these are broken down, you know, by project, and they'll jockey for position as grants become available. And so I think the key to the conversation today is we need long-term money to plan these moving forward. Whereas there's a lot of recreation grants out there, depending on if you're building trails or sidewalks or parking lots or whatever it may be. Whereas, you know, even the Major League Baseball grant, but there's not, that I'm aware of, a lot of grant monies out there for amphitheaters, if you will. So the economic development, the tour aspect, which the state controls a lot of that money, is where and where that ask comes from. And this why it's a good fit right now. So.
To sum it all up, we're tired of our plans just sitting on the shelf collecting dust. We need some money from our big brothers, fathers, mothers, whatever y'all call it, to come on down, trickle down, spread the wealth, spread the love, and let's move this area forward. That's all we need. Thank y'all so much.
Anybody else? Final words? Thank you all so much for being here, and I look forward to working with y'all in the upcoming session.